What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's edition of the On Purpose podcast, where it's our privilege to show up with you each and every week. And we wouldn't have it any other way. Over 6 years, over 320 episodes, and you just keep showing up, doing your part. So makes it easy. We just got to do our part. And together, we'll continue to move this thing forward and reach our goal of becoming one of the most impactful podcasts in the world. So I want to thank you for being here, and I'm excited to bring you interview this week. Coming to us from Hawaii is this week's guest, Lane Kawaoka, a former civil engineer who traded blueprints for breakthroughs. Lane's story isn't just about building wealth, it's about dismantling expectations, walking away from comfort, and choosing a life of intention. His journey from the cubicle to coaching thousands on financial freedom is a reminder that purpose often starts where conventional thought, wisdom ends. Right? A lot of times we're going to find ourselves when we go on our feeling, not what everybody else expects for us and of us. And I'm excited this week to sit down with Lane and learn from him, learn about the courage it took to make these changes, learn about the passion he's found in teaching others how to do the same thing, and to share it all with you. But before we get there, please do us a favor, get over, like, subscribe, share on your favorite platform. Give us a comment. Something as simple as a comment. It does amazing things in helping the algorithms promote us to reach more people around the world. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for helping us build what we like to consider a movement. And now enjoy this week's interview with Lane Kawaoka. Lane, my newest friend, welcome to the On Purpose podcast. How are you today?
Hey, thanks for having me. Aloha, everybody.
Dude, all the way from Hawaii.
Yeah, it's a little early out here, but hey, that's the price of paradise, I suppose.
It looks beautiful in the background there.
Yeah. Well, it's a background, I'm an engineer at heart, so the office is always messy as can be. So
Well, Lane, I appreciate you coming on the show, and I want to thank you for what you're doing, my friend. I want to thank you for having the courage to, as we were talking off air, recreate your own success, right? Which a lot of times we won't do as adults. We get kind of pigeonholed into, man, we're really good at this. We're going to stay here, even though our heart and our desires are somewhere else. So I want to thank you for following your courage to do that. But then also, more importantly, is you're sharing how you did it so others can learn from you.
yeah, exactly. I mean, we'll go into my backstory, but I think it's something that's not talked about a lot, right? Like going through, everybody talks about, the successes at the end, but it's the messy middle,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, and we want to skip that so many times in our life, but truly when you think back to your journey, as you call it, the messy middle is where the fun stories are, where you really find out what you're about.
Right. And it's a lot of it's just reactionary. There's no
Mm.
book on it.
Yeah, there's no book on it, and you can't do it until you're in it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like
Exactly.
you can have all the plans in the world, but you really don't know what curveballs are coming, what blind sides are going to hit you until you're actually in the momentum, in the process of making the action.
Yeah. And a lot of the lessons don't come out till maybe 3, 4, 5 years much later, right? When you're going through it, it just seems like trials and tribulations and BS and yeah, unfortunate things. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to get to your mindset on it. But before we do, because I know you're just getting going, Lane, I got to have you warm up, buddy. We got to do a little warm up question to get the audience really to understand what's going on behind Lane and make sure we're ready to take on the mission today. And that's delivering purposeful content to our community. You ready for your warm up?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Lane, you get to describe your life in one word. What's your word?
Ooh, eventful.
Eventful? Nice. What makes you say that?
Well, I think the theme is it kind of started on the straight and narrow linear path, but lately it's been a series of pivots every 2 to 5 years. I think.
That's good. What's a favorite quote or a quote you kind of live by, Lane?
Never take financial advice from people who are not financially free.
Ooh, so good.
I mean, I guess it can be applied to like never take business advice or life advice from somebody who's not successful in your eyes.
How long, when did you find that quote, or has that been with you for a while?
Yeah, it's been with me for at least 10, 15 years, right? Like I think a lot of it is you see a lot of tips and tricks online and TikTok these days, but who is the real person behind that random piece of tweetable advice?
Mm.
Does it
Yeah,
really apply to you and your situation?
I love that so much. That's one of my pet peeves. I got to be honest with you in life is people that take advice from people that are unqualified to give it, and then they just hold it. And a lot of times that advice holds you back from being who you're supposed to be.
Right, right. And you never know the application, right? Like everybody's going through this kind of timeline of their own life. It's kind of like what I've written in my book. We talk about there's different stages to the wealth building journey. Different tricks or tips don't really apply to you when you're $500,000 net worth, $2 million net worth, for example. And it's, something I've picked up. I'm an EO, and we always say we never give advice because that'll just piss people off. And like, it's just not useful. Every situation is different, even though two situations very similar. So we always come from a place of we experience share. So everything I talk about, I don't know if it apply to you. Frankly, I don't really care, but it's a gift from my own experience basket, and you can take it for how it is.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that filter is important, right? To filter of, okay, I'm going to listen to what Lane says, and I'm going to take what does work for me and not just take everything at face value that it's always going to work for me.
Correct, correct. And while we're at it, I am not giving any financial advice because I don't know who you are, listener out there, and that's part of finances, it's all personal. So,
Yeah.
but I will go through my story. I do think a lot of people follow this path, but just know it's just my story and my own lessons learned from it too.
Yeah, no, I love it, Lane. All right, if you get to have a theme song for your life, what would your theme song be?
Well, I don't know. I just, back in the day when we were like bonehead kids, they always like the wrestling music, wrestlers music, right? So probably like something rock and roll and fun like Thunderstruck or, some kind of Cold
Okay.
Stone Steve Austin thing for no good reason, right?
Uh, Yeah, I love it. You're an old school wrestling fan.
Yeah, or like, I guess these days, like when the Major League Baseball closers come out, right? They seem to have some kind of show of similar nature, like you when the UFC guy comes out, right?
Yeah, I love it. Well, you're from the islands. You got some great UFC fighters over there. Max Holloway, BJ Penn.
Yeah, yeah, because ain't nothing to do here but scrap, right?
That used to be the slogan, right? Just scrap. That's what BJ Penn did his whole career.
Yeah, I was actually at like I saw Max Holiday in line recently, and like they're not that tall, these guys. I mean, I'm pretty short myself, but I was just thinking, man, like I don't want to mess with this guy. This guy could whip my ass pretty easily, right? Like you,
I don't know, Lane. If we gave you your theme song and got you fired up, you might have a shot.
no, I'm pretty sure. I was like 1 feet away from the guy. I was like, man, this guy would hammer me pretty bad, but.
Oh, that's funny. All right, Lane, what's a favorite book or a book you consistently find yourself going back to for knowledge?
I try to go through a lot of different books depending on what I'm looking at. Like something I'll do, like we journal, we share. I'm in several different peer founder groups, and what I sometimes I do, I note take from there and I put it into ChatGPT and I ask it what book should I read to solve this
Hmm.
particular issue or problem. But I mean, I probably go through a book every other month on Audible. So I tend not to reread books, but if to answer your question, I think it would be Think and Grow Rich. I mean, I mean, we talked about how tricks and tips are bad, right? But that book might be the exception. There is probably like, I don't know, like dozens and dozens of little tricks and tips in that particular book. The problem is it's so dense. So when I read it, I kind of just idly listen and what naturally comes up. Like, I mean, in a way, let the universe speak to me. I can't remember one of them off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Maybe you can, but I'm like, oh, maybe I'll try and do that this next week when I go to this thing.
Yeah, no, that's good. All right, Lane, you get to have dinner with one person. They can still either still be with us or may have passed on. Who would you have dinner with, and what would you want to ask them?
Ooh, I mean, I'm not a one to like idolize anybody. I think everybody is kind of, celebrities are kind of showing one side of their face. Um, everybody's, nobody's geniuses in all areas, but I mean, sometimes I am kind of curious on what was some decisions made and, some presidential conspiracy, government conspiracies a little bit. Or like, maybe ask the last Fed chair, like, what were you thinking during just to know, like,
Yeah.
like things like Powell right now, like everybody says Trump is down his neck, lower interest rates, but is that really how it works? It's like, for all we know, may talk to him and be like, yeah, I never even talked to that. He didn't even send me an email in 2 years. I don't know where everybody's getting all this nonsense from.
Yeah, no, it ties back to your earlier one. Don't take advice from people that can't give you advice, right? We get information. We don't really know what's the truth.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like noise too out there, right? Everybody, I forget, somebody gave me a good acronym what news is. So it was kind of a funny acronym, but it basically is like noteworthy events that like sensationalizes attention or something like that.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. So I would, yeah, that'd be an interesting conversation you might have with him.
Yeah, yeah. But other than that, I don't really. I mean, I think a lot of like economic signs are out there. Like where interest rates are going. You can go to the CME Financial, Chatham Financial, a lot of these interest rate cap providers. Like those are the people that have the best crystal ball out there
Mm.
where interest rates are going. And, you look what monetary supply are going. And then, especially when you try and invest in things that are things like real estate where the need isn't going to fundamentally change anytime soon. That said, the America's population might go down in 30 years or so, but, that's a long time from now.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective to have is no matter what interest rates do and the money does, the dollar is up and down, the need for housing's always there. It's a universal need that never goes away.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, there might be better deals outside different countries, but in America, you still have the best, loan packages, and we all complain about them, but lawyers kind of keep things within normal here.
Yeah. All right, Lane, before we get too far into the finance stuff, are you feeling warmed up? You seem like you're warmed up. You ready? You got your theme song going? We're ready to get into the
Yeah,
crap.
yeah.
All right, Lane, I want to talk to you about the change you made in your life, right? You were climbing a civil engineering ladder, successful there, and you decided to go a different direction. Kind of talk us through that process. What opened your eyes to that and eventually led you to making those changes?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of starting out. I was always kind of told to be an engineer, get a white collar job, go to college. So, a lot of these professions, you spend like at least a decade kind of grooming yourself in one way or another to going down that path. I graduated University of Washington in 2007 and started to working, and I was already kind of like, this kind of sucks. But then again, like, what young professional really likes their first job, the
Right.
first few years out of college, right? Like you're supposed to do entry level stuff, and it sucks. Um, I'm kind of known to be a bit of a maverick in terms of like that strengths finder, or forget which one, but
Mhm.
for mavericks out there, you struggle a lot early in your career because you kind of think it's beneath you, right?
Mm.
Which is horrible. I mean, from that side, it's horrible to be like that. But Mavericks also revolutionize things and think that they're better than they are, is kind of the bad way of saying it. But they also like, they go after bigger things
Mhm.
and they kind of bit of a leader and a maverick, right? That's what
Yeah.
the name suggests. So I started to work as a construction supervisor. I was put in a position of leadership, so that was great, right? That really helps me run my business today. And it's just I didn't like it. We traveled all over for work. I was never home, but it allowed me money to save up. So I was saving like 30, 40, 50 grand per year starting out. And then that was where I was able to buy a house to live pretty quickly.
Mhm.
And again, I followed everything my parents and everybody you're not supposed to listen to about finances, bought a house to live in. Because I was never home for work, I just started to rent it out, and that was kind of where things always happened from there. Started rental real estate track and grew it to 2015 I had 11 rentals all while I was working my engineering job, which I was learning valuable skills begrudgingly. Didn't have very much fun doing it, but it is what it is, right? That was in the 20s was the era of obtain skills and build capital.
Yeah, no, we have these phases in life, and I love that you said that, right? Because I think sometimes we get confused, especially when we're young, and we think in the 20s we're supposed to already have everything we're going to have later in life. But you're absolutely right. You're supposed to be building the skills you're going to need for later in life.
Yeah, and that's what's tough with like AI now, right? Like I think a lot of unemployment with new college grads, early stage, early career people. Not to also add in there that they're all working from home, right? You don't get any mentorship
Mm,
there. If you apply the 70-20-10 rule, 70% of it is actually doing the work, 20% is from learning from peers. So if you're automatically missing that. So I
yeah.
don't know. I don't know. It just doesn't get any easier, right, for the younger guys, but I don't know. Not my
Yeah.
problem.
Thankfully, they're adaptable, right? You're adaptable when you're young.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess they get AI, get computers, get Google, but their their downside is everything's damn more costly and you don't have these entry level jobs to gain these skills that we're kind of talking about here.
Yeah, it'll be interesting how that plays out long term, whether we come up with a new set of entry level skills that kind of morph off of what we can replace through AI and stuff, or if we're gonna have to reinvent everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think like you were alluding to earlier, everybody doesn't want to do those entry level stuff. They think they're little hot stuff, right? I mean, in a way, it's kind of like this the sushi chef that spends 5 years washing rice, right? Like nobody wants to do that type of stuff in a career facet, but there's unfortunately that's how the game somewhat works, right? The people in power, which is the Gen X and now the Gen Zers and or the millennials like myself, we call the shots, right? We hold the power in companies unless you want to go start your own. But that was not my path, so I don't know that path. I went through corporate America, Fortune 50 company for at least 10 years, and then I started my own thing in my 30s.
Yeah, so talk to me about that. So you're starting to dabble in real estate investment and rental real estate specifically, and you kind of got your eye on going somewhere else. What was the feedback you were getting from your peers as far as like you making that change, Lane?
Oh, I don't tell any of my peers. I don't tell people anything that I might fail that don't do it themselves. Like,
Right.
not gonna tell. Like, that's why I joined all these founder groups because it is pretty commonplace to try crazy stuff and walking into the unknown and uncomfortable. And that is a safe place to be vulnerable for that stuff. But people who don't, I'm not gonna tell. I'm not gonna tell my parents what I do,
What'd
that
your
we're
parents
taking a
say
risk.
when you decided to make that change?
Um, I don't know. They still don't understand, to be honest. I got Asian parents. They'll never understand. They just don't understand why would you got a master's degree in engineering. Why are you not doing that? You have a PE too. Like, why not do that? Just doesn't make any sense to them.
Right.
And then they're like, why are you not investing in the 401k? It's like, geez, we've gone through this a few times. I've given up telling you this. You only got so much finite energy. I'm gonna spend my time on doing things that are productive.
Mm.
I don't talk about politics. It's a waste of my time. I don't
Yep.
try and pontificate what's gonna happen with the younger people with AI. Not my problem, really. I mean, I guess it impacts me because I am an employer, but I try and focus my time and effort on things that, move the needle, right?
Yep. No, I love that. And I love what you said. I would like to hear a little more on that because your peer group at one place wasn't trying to be where you were going to go. You had to have different peers, and you went out and found groups to put yourself in that did accept the kind of behavior you were going to be going into and the risk taking, the thought process. I think that's so important for our listeners because sometimes we want the community we're in to be the community we're trying to get to, and that's not going to work.
Yeah, so here's I was kind of foreshadowing in the beginning, right? Like there's different pivot points. Definitely like thinking back to 2016 was when I started to interact with other accredited investors. Up until this point, I didn't have a rich uncle. My parents never owned rental real estate, right? We were somewhat middle class. And then I just haphazardly sort of stumble upon these groupings, ecosystems of people who had many, many rental properties, owned apartments, people with a net worth $1 million or greater, not just your run-of-the-mill house flipper, wholesaler, people getting started in real estate, but people who are already off and rolling, step two and step three. That we kind of coined this in the Wealth Elevator book, like these different levels, right? Um, I would probably say people might hear that as like, all right, it's critical to find your people, your network, your ecosystem. But I would probably say the one twist is you got to get yourself to a certain point first, right? Like for example, you never go to some random networking group because you're just there with like level zero, -1 people there. Everybody's looking out for themselves. They haven't done anything. They're doing more networking and BSing than actually doing the work,
Mm.
right? So that was critical for me to, I had already been investing in real estate since 2009, and this is fast forward 2015. I already had 11 rental properties at this point. In a way, I thought I was hot stuff, but then I go into this world and I'm like, whoa, everybody has some hundreds of thousands of rental properties. And that was kind of, I think that was where things kind of went off the ground for me, right? I took off from there was when I number one realized it was possible. Like, oh, here's all these people who are extremely wealthy, super smart, but they're not really intellectually smart. You know what I mean? Like they're just regular people, but they just kind of stuck to a path, and this is the path. And this is where I started to just take notes and gain best practices and what we teach people today, which is, invest in alternative investments, things off Wall Street, where they're taking all the returns and you're taking on all the risk, and you're getting these great tax benefits, and you did a little bit internal privatized banking with yourself. And this trifecta of strategies is what the wealthy do. The trouble is it's complete opposite than what my parents taught me or what people talk about in, the cubicle world out there.
Yeah, no, that's so, and I love what you said that you had to create, had to get into the space before you were ready to get the advice that could propel you, right? Because you already had your own experience, and I think that's sometimes what a lot of times we try to skip is getting our own experience, and we just rely on completely like the advice of others or the plan of others, but we don't have our own experience to say what is actually going to work for us, what is a path we want, and we find ourselves just running this circle of gathering information and information and information and never taking action.
Yeah. Yeah. Or maybe that information isn't for you at that time, right? Like in my book, we have different floors of the wealth elevator. So the first floor is like the basement level, people who make under 50 grand per year, under $100,000 net worth. Not our group, right? Like that's maybe check out a blog or a Susie Orman, Dave Ramsey book, right? Get out of debt, right? I personally started on the first floor. I had some student loans, but I just bought rental properties after rental property after rental property for, you know, I mean, I did it pretty quickly because I was able to save 50, 100 grand per year to plow into down payments for rental properties.
Right.
But this could take somebody a decade to get through. Um, but then now at that point, I was kind of stepping into a credit investor world, which is kind of what we put on the wealth elevator diagram is the second floor, right? Where you're investing in syndications, private placements as a passive investor into larger commercial off-market deals. And there's some more floors after that. But this is where like we today we do community events. So this is kind of an interesting failure, I guess, that I found. We do these community events, and I'm big on like, you bring your family, you bring your spouse. Sometimes most of our clients these days are like in their 50s, so they have somewhat adult children by that age. So we've had some of them bring their kids. It doesn't work unless the kid's been like in the trenches working, like 25, 27 years old at least. Certainly doesn't work if the kid doesn't have a freaking job, right?
Mm.
They're just not able to they come and they see, oh, here's kind of these cool alternative thinking people, but they're kind of lazy. It's like, well, maybe I need to be lazy too. It's like, no, you need to go out there, make some freaking money. Don't just take your mom and dad's money. You're lucky that you're already second gen wealth,
Right.
right? Because we're all the first generation multimillionaires. But it just it needs to kind of go through that hardening phase a little bit, right? If not, it's just like, oh, these people are just lazy, they're just passively investing or investing their wealth. Well, how did you think they freaking got that initial capital from the beginning? They worked their butts off, they saved, they budgeted well.
Hmm.
But no, that was kind of where, like, to your earlier point, like, unless you're ready for it, you're not at that stage. The lessons, the things that the tips aren't really pertain, or they don't get absorbed the right way.
Yeah, that and how do you know when you're ready?
Well, so that's where, like, everything that you're trying to do is, and there's usually somebody who's done it,
Mm.
right? Like, I kind of stay in my lane, which is money and finances, going from somebody who was on the first floor of the wealth elevator, not much net worth, but had a decent job and good pay and good money skills. I progressed the second floor, third floor of the wealth elevator and above. And that's kind of where I start to make this kind of like Candyland path going through this.
Hmm.
And again, it's not for everybody. Investing in alternative investments, most people should never invest in alternative investments. Most people are horrible at ascertaining risk, and they should just stick with the 60/40 stocks, bonds, mutual fund, index fund stuff. But some people are able to take ownership and have intention to invest their capital. And these are the people that can transcend up the wealth elevator, as we say. But this is kind of where I kind of made some loose guidelines on, like, well, when is it that I should step up to bigger deals or just keep churning and buying rental properties, right? And from what I've ascertained, right about when you hit $1 million net worth is kind of when you step up to the bigger deals and you scale out of buying little single family home rentals.
Okay. So what would you say to this thing? What role would you say like dissatisfaction or just discomfort kind of allowed you to pivot towards being an entrepreneur and investing?
That's everything, right? Like, pain is a very important ingredient. That's what gets you off in the morning to go work out. That's what prevents you from putting the cookie in your mouth. That's what makes you painstakingly budget or defer gratification in the money world. Unless you're in a state of pain, like, you got to be a weirdo to do what is difficult and necessary,
Mm.
right? I
Yeah,
mean, like, that's what makes some of the great, like Kobe Bryant. He was like top of the game at one time. He just
right.
thought of weird stories people told him that to motivate him even more. Like, not everybody's as neurotic as that. And then it even is like, there's a saying in the money world, 90% of wealth leaves families in 2 to 3 generations, right? The first generation gets the family over $1 million, $2 million net worth. The second, goes to the best colleges, becomes a good contributor to society. It's that third generation that typically is unmotivated to blow it. And we all say, like, what a nincompoop generation that third generation is, right? But then if you look at it, it's like, well, it is kind of unfair for them. There's no pain, there's no need. Their parents got them everything that they wanted, and like, it
Yeah.
almost is a very sad existence if you think the the Playboy lifestyle is like something to be like sorry for. Like, nobody really has sympathy for that. But when you just look at it from that perspective, like, this poor chap doesn't really have pain in their life to kind of motivate them, right? They don't have we're all motivated by the carrot or the stick.
Mm.
Unfortunately, they don't have the stick chasing them. They have to
Yep.
find something bigger to pull them to motivate them.
Well,
And
you even hit on that earlier, Lane, when you said when people come to the seminars and the classes and they bring their adult kids, but the adult kids, you said they see people being lazy, alternative investments, making money without doing a whole lot. They can only see that because they haven't had the pain of earning the initial money.
yeah, yeah. So like I guess it's pain, just to use that example. It's pain is, obviously we're talking about that, but another thing is exposure too.
Hmm.
Like I got my kid in gymnastics. I don't know if she sucks or not, who knows, right? But we won't know unless she tries it out, right? She has exposure to something. No different than if those first, second generation kids see a different world of people, investing smarter, working smarter, I guess, or less. Unless you're exposed to that. Just like how I was, right? Again, when I was in 2015, I had 11 rental properties and I was moving from the first floor to the second floor of the wealth elevator. I probably would have just kept buying more and more rental properties, increasing my cash flow, but increasing my legal liability and headaches at that point. And if I wasn't exposed to a different way, a different pivot, then I would have kept doing what I was doing. And there's a saying out there, what got you here is not going to get you there. And that is a truth that is always, if you choose to keep growing.
Yeah, no, that's a great saying, a good philosophy. Going back to that, your quote on three generations of wealth, I've also heard that applied to wars. And I find it very interesting, right? Like your grandpa's generation goes to war and fights a very bloody battles around the country. So that first generation fights the war, wins the war. The second generation avoids war because they've seen the cost that it took on their parents at that time. The third generation looks for war because they've never experienced any pain. They've only heard the glory stories that come from the war.
Yeah, very similar to, I don't know what quote it's from, but like, like bad times create strong men create good times create weak men, and it just cycles, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting. And I love that you brought that up. As an engineer, I'm guessing you look for patterns and things that are repeatable and duplicatable because I think if you look at human nature, we are very cyclical and you can almost see where we're headed if you're just paying attention to following the patterns.
Yeah, like some people are very like historical focused, right? Your history majors. I'm not so much. I'm not quite an academic, but I definitely recognize the practicality of like, I mean, again, I don't want to go through pain. So if I can learn from somebody else, I'm gonna try and glean that and go over the speed bump in a
Right.
different way.
Yeah, but I think what you're saying is so important, and that's that you are moving. Like you're going to have some pain because you're in the process of doing the thing, but you don't need all the pain because while you're there, you can learn from what somebody else has done. But it's hard to learn if I'm not doing any of it.
Right, right. And I think that transitions maybe into like people who are running businesses, doing different things. You need to somewhat self-regulate, like, like open yourself up to pain and then really, you can't live like that, right? You can't live like a wartime CEO all the time. That's just not healthy.
Right.
Just it's just like I don't know if any basketball player that goes out there for 48 minutes thinking that he has to prove himself wrong. I mean, that's just it seems effective in the short term, or there's come some point where you just run into burnout.
Mhm. Yeah, diminishing returns, right? You can only go so hard for so long.
Yeah.
Lane, let me ask you about this because I know you work with many first generation investors. So, what fears or myths do you see that tend to hold them back, and how do you kind of help them rewire to get to new patterns?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of barriers, right? Like when you follow my journey, like I wasn't really married or have kids when I was making all these pivotal decisions, right? Going from zero to one. Now married with kids, it's a little bit easier to make these decisions. So this is something empathetically that I was kind of, working with clients. This is what they have to deal with. This, let's call it what it is, a skeptic spouse.
Mm.
And depending if the spouse comes for money or doesn't come with money, sometimes they come with some extra financial emotional baggage with that. For example, like, if a spouse never had a house growing up and they finally actually get a house now because, that's what happens. They typically work at things, a career, etc. They to take, capital away from that or elsewhere to deploy it out there and play offense, you can have some real hesitation and marriage conflict with that. So it's definitely something out there, and I don't play marriage cop or anything like that. I just kind of leave it is. I recognize it as a big barrier for a lot of guys or gals having to lead that. Most times in a couple, you have one person who is the leader financially. Personally speaking, that's how it is. I make pretty much all the financial decisions over $1,000.
Right.
But there are other things I'm really horrible at, such
Right.
as with my kids, like that's why I think we're kind of a good team.
Sure.
Some people will argue with that, right? I guess in business at least, I can say confidently, if you and your business partner do the same things, you don't need one of you guys,
Mm,
is the idea.
so true.
I'm not gonna say that that applies to marriage, but it's just different ideas out there. But this is where, like I think I observe a lot of these types of characteristics and tendencies taking place, and it is a barrier. But I guess to answer your question, like ultimately, I just try to reframe people and say, look, if you keep doing the status quo, invest in the 401k where you don't really get any good tax benefits and you pay more taxes potentially in the future, and you're just investing in the garbage investments that they want you to invest in, we know what's going to happen, right? It's just math.
Mm.
And in part of that, you're paying a lot of taxes. Like your net worth has so much drag to increase. But, like that's if you're okay with the status quo, and again, there's no pain, or the pain isn't strong enough,
Yeah.
you don't need to change. And if you're happy where you're at, maybe I should take a page from your book, in fact. But yeah, like then it's like, well, then it's a no-go.
Yeah. So what do we do then? Like to get people to see the alternatives that are possible, right? Because you're right. I'll be honest, I had no idea what my 401k was doing for me when I was in a government job until I left and I hired my own wealth advisor. And one of the first things he wanted to do was get us out of a 401k because just what you said, it creates tax liability that we can't even plan for in the future because we don't know what the rates are going to be, and get into stuff that we could more manage and use our money today. But that was so counter to everything I'd ever been taught.
Yeah, so like I think the first thing is to educate and learn, right? I think oftentimes, finances and index funds, ETFs, like they try to make it on purpose super confusing to be like, oh no, 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 you should just trust us with all our PhDs in machine learning. And which yeah, they probably do a pretty good job, but is it worth the fees,
Mm.
the hidden fees? If you believe in the expense ratio as just what they're charging you, you probably believe in the Easter Bunny too. They're just charging you things above the line,
Yeah,
right? Different expenses. Like if their CEO takes a trip, that's coming out of their expenses above the line,
right.
for example. But education first, just to set the level playing field. But unfortunately, unless you get around other people doing the same things, challenging the status quo, it doesn't really stick. So I guess what I've kind of done, at least in our world, is in a more scalable manner. Like on our website, we have a master class that we give away for free. It's a webinar format. People want to get access to that, they can go to thewealthelevator.com/master, or just read my book if you're more of an audiobook book person, The Wealth Elevator on Amazon. But that kind of shakes things up a little bit and kind of talks objectively. Um, and then people will come to we do like an annual retreat, and I think that's where you see some of the success stories, and you also like talk with other people of like, yeah, this made no sense. Why would I do this stuff, right? But the problem is 99.999% of people out there, especially friends, family, are doing the complete opposite. And it's just difficult to fight that uphill battle, especially when you haven't done it yourself.
Yeah, and you
Um,
don't even know where to look, or I guess maybe even a lot of times you feel like the oddball. Like, why am I looking for stuff when everybody else seems so happy just doing it this way? Why can't I just be happy doing it this way?
yeah, and that's why like one of your earlier questions is like, I think you were asking like who did I tell? And it's like, I don't tell anybody. Like I'm dumb or something? Like why would I want to like st like why would if I'm starting a business, why would I talk to a bunch of W-2 salary workers
Yeah.
on doing this? Like that's like the worst. Am I trying to talk myself out of it on purpose or something like that? Like,
That could be though, right? Maybe some of us are like we have these dreams, we have these ideas, and we're almost afraid of our own success. So we do go to that same circle because we know they won't see what's possible because they're not doing it, which then kind of gives us that peace of mind of, oh, I'll just stay here.
yeah, I mean, only like I said, my earlier quote, only take financial advice from people who are financially free. Only take business advice from people who are successful business owners too.
Mm. Yeah, and that's when an event, we were talking about AI earlier and stuff, and you mentioned like you use Chat GPT to take a topic you come across in a meeting and what book should I read to solve this problem? I think that's one of the benefits of today's world is we have the ability to put ourselves in circles and in groups and with people that we would have never met previously generations, right? Previous generations had no ability to meet with in Hawaii from Wyoming today, but we do. So I really encourage our community to take responsibility from who is in your circle and don't just settle for who's just available.
Right, right. Like I think, people are podcast listeners, you're probably pretty conscientious of like listening to podcasts, maybe an audiobook or two. But I think maybe that's one of the traps, right? Like once you've listened to somebody's 100 episodes of somebody's podcast, it's the same thing over and over again. Podcasts are free. You pay for what you get. They're just somewhat marketing tools. You have to find, you have to kind of dig to that second level, and that's kind of some type of in-person interaction or a higher level offering that the person may have. You have to get to that ecosystem. I mean, just applying the whole like, I think I mentioned it earlier, the 70-20-10 rule. How do you learn stuff? 70-20-10 rule. So 10% is the academic stuff. That's the stuff you might read in a book, the podcasts. 20% is actually learning from other people. Right? That's where that stage two comes in. You're mixing up face to face, or you have a coach. But the vast majority of the learning, the 70%, is just doing it,
Yeah.
messing it up, doing it. And that's where I think a lot of people fall by the wayside. But at least if the idea is like, look, I know I talked to 1,000 people. I know, like, first of all, 100 of them are, only 100 will be getting past reading the damn book. Like, I mean, I started my podcast back in 2016. One of the jokes starting out was like, we would give people like the spreadsheet analyzer on how to like analyze properties, right? We just give it away for free. And we still do. I think, yeah, we still do on the website. I think it's thewealthelevator.com/turnkey. If you're looking to buy a little round of properties, it's there for free. But at the time, I didn't have a website. So I just say, oh, email me if you want this analyzer. I'll just send you the link for the Google Drive or whatever. And like, how many, like, we knew we had a lot of listeners, but what percentage of people like actually freaking emailed us, like got off their ass and emailed us? Like, not that
Minimal.
many.
Right.
So it's like, all right, well, people who get the education, which ones are actually going to step to that stage two of actually mixing up with live people? And how many of those people are going to take action?
Yeah.
And I got really frustrated by this. I'm like, man, the guys, it's like kind of easy, It's like, it's kind of simple, But look, like financial independence is not for everybody. If not, who would build our bridges? Who would be our doctors? Who would get our coffee as a barista? Like,
Yeah. And there's honestly, I forget where I heard this, but one of the it was somewhere that talked about one of the biggest hurdles to freedom is being scared of what you're going to do when you are totally free, right? Just that fear of being ultimately like, okay, I've created all this freedom in my life, and now it's only up to me. What am I going to do from here? Can I handle it?
Yeah, I think that applies to people who've actually started to get to that 70% phase and actually doing it.
Yeah.
Um, the trouble is the majority, like 99% of people aren't there and they just need to just do something or even
Yeah.
learn, just learn and start mixing it up. Then
Yeah. No, I
I don't
agree.
know. I'm not a big mindset person. I'm kind of like, all right, when you get your net worth to $1 million, then we'll talk. But all these mindset stuff, motivation, I'm kind of like, I don't know. It kind of just complicates things, I think, or it's like go out and do it. But maybe I need to improve as a coach
Yeah, I
in
don't
that
know, man.
mindset.
I think there's middle ground there, right? I think I just shared this in one of the episodes not too long ago that my view, this is just my view, I could be wrong, but manifestation, right? That's a big buzzword. Now everybody wants to manifest all this stuff in life. But if you do manifesting without work, I call that daydreaming, right? That's just literally sitting around daydreaming about what you want to happen, but you're not actually working to make it happen. And that's where I think we bridge that gap. Is yeah, mindset stuff's important, but like to your point, I won't know what I don't know or where I need to pivot and adjust until I get in action of putting things into play and doing. So get some knowledge and then take steps and get going. And you're going to adjust multiple times to end up where you're actually supposed to be.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on something there, right? Like if we're talking like this is a complex, semi-complex 8 to 16 step program here. Um, put maybe the motivation stuff is kind of like that boost you need to get over a step or two. Or if people ever been to like a Tony Robbins event, they always say like these events are kind of like taking a bath, right? You go, it's great, but it kind of wanes at some point. Sometimes you can take certain habits and make it stick for a long, long time, but you know, maybe like if you think of it like an energy drink, right? Like you shouldn't drink an energy drink all the time,
Right?
but like use it to get over that sticking point. If you're already using your NOS or your energy drink in step one, buddy, you got problems, right? You're not
Yeah.
building that fortitude, that muscle that gets you from step to step to step.
Yeah. But I call it momentum, right? I want our community to like get momentum going, take steps. You're going to get inertia flowing in the way you want to go, which is also going to attract the energy and the people you need in that circle because you're now in different places than you were. So, Lane, let me ask you, where can our audience connect with you and follow along? Wealthelevator.com. Where else would you like them to follow along and support your journey?
Yeah, they can check out the book on Amazon, The Wealth Elevator. We've tried to distill everything down to more of a digestible read. If you enjoy long form content, I guess that's the podcast that I've been doing since 2016. There's about 450 episodes or so on that
Okay.
thing. But yeah, if you're an accredited investor, shoot me an email, lane@thewealthelevator.com. But even if you're just a non-accredited investor buying little rental properties, we definitely have some resources for you guys to like the analyzer, how to buy a little rental property to get started, right? I
Awesome.
mean, we've tried to build this kind of journey from buying little rental properties to beyond. And that's kind of what we do here. More serving, people who are, first floor of the wealth elevator and beyond.
I love it. Lane, before I let you go, I got one final question for you. If someone asked you not what you do, but what you're building, how would you answer that?
Well, I figure I have a long time to figure what the end game is. I mean, I'm still in my 40s, right? So this is the kind of time that I feel like we just keep our head down. We just keep finding things to invest in, operating them, and maybe in 5 to 10 years, I kind of think of what's next. But I'm still in the sculpting stage. I don't know what I'm creating.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Lane, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been an honor to share your story with our community, and we wish you the best, my friend.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Lane Kawaoka. Very interesting. Brought up some big points that I've learned throughout my life, especially around the 401ks and stuff. I didn't spend a ton of time diving into, like he said, financial advice and stuff, but it's certainly worth looking at as like, at least for us when we made this pivot in our life is the tax implications of a 401k and what it really meant for us. So if you're into finances and stuff, I encourage you to go down that rabbit hole and look in those things. But what I hope you take away from that is here was a guy that was successful, that was doing all the things that his parents and society told him he should be doing. Yet, as he just described himself as a maverick, he wanted something different. He wanted something more, and he wasn't afraid to take that leap to recreate things. And I hope you find that in yourself. If you're doing things that are checking the boxes of what others expect, but leaving you unfulfilled, maybe we can look to segue over, right? And like we did in our journey, we made subtle changes that led to a bigger change. Lane was saving, investing so he could make a bigger leap later. So ask yourself, what are the small things you could be doing now if you do have security and safety and whatever it is you're doing, but you really want to be somewhere else? What are small things you could do now that slowly move you towards that point? Have a great week, everybody. And as always, thank you for being here.